Hey guys, it's Molly. I'm back today painting some tomatoes. Truthfully, groceries have become so unbelievably expensive in Canada that I just feel like I have to get my money's worth now when we buy fresh produce. So I've started painting a lot of the stuff that we buy before we eat it, which, is great. Makes me feel like I'm not wasting my money and also forces me to practice some still life painting, which is notoriously not my favorite thing. And maybe it's not your favorite thing either. But today, sort of on that note, on the note of the horrors of capitalism, at least, I wanted to talk about what it's like to make art your job. I have been a working artist. It's been my full time job now for about a decade. That's when I got into tattooing. Before that, I was always making art, but I wasn't really selling it that often. It was still just like a hobby. It was the thing I aspired to do for work. But yeah, it's been about a decade now that I've been relying on my art practice to survive. And honestly, there's a lot of pros and cons about it. When people ask me about it, especially when people specifically ask me about tattooing, but even just about getting into art in general, my instinct is always to say, like, don't do it. Don't do it. Keep it as a thing that is a fun hobby that you can actually enjoy. But I know that that's not realistic. People want to be artists, and that's what I wanted. Ever since I was a little kid, I wanted it to be my job. Mostly because I can't imagine a different job. I can't imagine spending my time thinking about something else, and then having to just find time to, make art in like the little bits of extra time and energy that I find outside of my capitalist job. So, yeah, I just thought I would talk about it today. The biggest struggle, in my opinion, with being a working artist in the world today with the, capital C capitalism is what I would call capitalistic burnout. When art becomes your job, you suddenly have to start thinking about things that you didn't think about before. It no longer is just, what do I want to make, or what feels fun, or what kind of, mediums do I want to explore. Suddenly you have to think about, okay, what's gonna sell? Which, in my opinion, is the absolute antithesis to the art making process. When you start thinking constantly about, is this going to sell? All the creativity, all the fun gets stripped out of it. But that's the nature of the beast, I guess. And the ways that I've found to, I don't know, kind of counteract that feeling is to make sure that I'm still spending a lot of time just on what I call fun art. Not that my work isn't sometimes fun, but I kind of try to separate it in my brain. There's the art that I do for work, the stuff that has to sell, that has to appeal to a client base, that has to be really polished and has to sometimes fit a theme or, a series. And then there's the fun art, which is just me messing around in my sketchbook or painting tomatoes on some paper that I just happen to have laying around. And I find that, being able to separate it like that and to still allow myself room to play and to mess up and to make stuff that's ugly is really important for me. In the last couple of years, especially, I've gone through a lot of artistic burnout, specifically related to capitalism. If you live in the Western world, or maybe anywhere in the world, you know that, since the pandemic, things have not been super chill money-wise for most people. A lot of people struggle these days with money. A lot of stuff has become a lot more expensive than it needs to be. And a lot of sort of luxury expenses have had to be put aside. And for most people, very understandably, art is a luxury expense. Like as much as we need art to survive, as much as it fuels our passion, it's still just, something that's nice to have. It's not necessary to have. And artists have really felt that. I know, especially where I live, in Canada, in the tattoo industry, things have been rough the last couple of years, and we've really had to change the way that we market. We've had to adapt to things like TikTok. We've had to adapt to all the changes on Instagram and other social media. And it's rough out there, but making sure that I'm always putting that time aside for making weird stuff, making stuff that maybe nobody's going to see, that I'm never going to post online, or, I might post, but it's not really for sale. That has been so helpful in pulling me out of this sort of capitalism despair, which, like I said, is just the killer of creativity. So yeah, if you're thinking about getting into the arts as a full-time business, I think you should expect that you're going to go through periods when you feel burnt out and when you feel like you're just doing it for the money and the creativity is dead, but it's not dead. It's just tired, and you've got to give it a chance to rest and recharge. And a great way to recharge it is by, I don't know, painting your groceries. On that note, the next important thing that I wanted to talk about, for anyone who's thinking of really making a go at being an artist, is get off the internet. I know that these days that can sound really counterintuitive. So much business comes from places like Instagram and TikTok and YouTube. And it is a great way to find communities that love your work, to find artists that do stuff similar to you or really different from you. I'm not trying to say anything bad about the internet, but I think that if you're not finding ways to connect to a community in real life, you're never going to maintain your practice. You're never going to be able to really get those lifelong fans, those people that support you and buy your stuff. And it's just a really great way to remind yourself what art making is really about, which is connecting with people. I think that I'm not the only one who sometimes feels like the connections that I make online, even when they are amazing, are a little bit hollow. It can be tough to post something, and even if it gets 100, 200, 300 likes or, responses, comments, it's still just 300 sort of faceless replies. People that you probably don't really know. You have no idea where they live. You have no idea if they're a real person or a bot. But something that I have found really helpful is engaging with the community around me in real life. So in this past couple of years, I've gotten really into art markets. I'm really lucky because my partner is also an artist, so we're able to sort of split booth fees and stuff. But truthfully, if you look around your community, you might find some arts and craft markets that have really cheap booth fees. Often in smaller towns, smaller cities, it's like maybe $10, $20 for a day at an art market. And first of all, prepping for a market is a lot of fun. It encourages you to paint, draw, whatever it is that you do. It encourages you to make inventory, to really fill out your collection of finished products. And then participating in the market is just as fun. I have made some really cool connections with other artists, just by nature of having a booth next to them at an arts market. Whether the market's busy or not, you usually end up chatting with your sort of booth neighbors, and it can be a really cool way to find other artists in your community. Also, I find at markets, even if we don't sell a ton of stuff, there's always people that come up just to talk to you. They want to look at your stuff. They want to ask you questions. Sometimes, they might just take a card and they might not buy anything that day, but that meeting and that conversation could translate into future commissions, future sales. And even if you don't make the most money that day, it's just a really fun time to hang out in a community of creative people, to see what other people are making, and to chat with members of your community. So I really recommend that if you are able, if they are available around you, that you try out an art market, maybe one that you only have to commit to one day, because then, if it's really bad, if you don't like it, you don't have to do a whole season. But yeah, that is something that I really would push people to try, even if it's outside of your comfort zone. If you're not really a markets person, I totally get that. Some people's work doesn't really fit the vibe of a market. I also recommend try joining a gallery show if you have that around you. Or maybe even try attending a workshop or throwing a workshop if you feel like you have something to teach and something to share. That kind of stuff is just such a great way, once again, to connect with the artistic community that is actually living near you, which can just feel so much more real than connecting with people online. I'm trying not to put pressure on myself about this one, but there's actually a local gallery in my incredibly small town that I now live in. It's just down the street, and it is just a coffee shop, but they use their dining space as a gallery. And for our small community, it's a pretty prestigious slot if you can manage to get in this gallery. And we've lived here for 2 years now, and I haven't really attempted. I've just been focused on other things. But as I've been starting this sort of accidental vegetable series, I've been thinking again about how great it would be to put some pieces into their gallery. They usually offer to host like a little opening night if you are so inclined, where you can invite people, like your friends, family, whoever. And they take a small commission, as most galleries do. But honestly, once again, like the money is great. And when art is your job, you need to make money. But so much of it is about showing that community and this area that you exist, about giving people a chance to see what you do, which can open up doors in the future, even if you don't sell everything right away. So much of being a working artist is playing that sort of long game, recognizing that you might not be making a sale every day, but one day you might make 10 sales in a day. And yeah, it's a little bit stressful at times to have such an unpredictable income. But if I'm being honest, that is what happens when you're a working artist. And truthfully, if you are looking for a job with a more steady and predictable income, this might not be the path for you. But if you are in a position where you can take that leap and you can sort of be a little bit more uncertain financially, when you do make those sales and you put a piece in a market or in a gallery and maybe you price it a little higher than you think anyone will pay, and then someone pays it, it is an amazing feeling. It's what the whole thing is about, right? I mean, art is about connecting with people, and in our capitalist hellscape of society, sometimes the way that people show that they feel a connection with you is to shell out a couple $100s for a painting. I recently sold a small piece that I had hanging in my tattoo station and been there for months. It's just a small little acrylic on wood panel, and I only had it priced at $100, but to me that seemed like a lot, considering that it was a pretty small painting. Wasn't usually like the type of thing that I usually do. And I had a tattoo client come in and on her way out the door tell me, oh, by the way, I'm going to take that painting as well. And I was dumbfounded. I was like, are you kidding? Are you sure? And she was like, yeah, I was staring at it for my whole tattoo appointment and I love it. And so I sold a little painting that day, and it just felt really good to know that she had just seen it. She hadn't been planning to buy any art that day, but it had spoken to her somehow and she just had to have it. And to me, like, there's no better feeling than that when art is your job. So if you can, get out into the real world, go to a gallery, go to a market, go wherever they are displaying art and wherever they are inviting people like you to display your art, and try it out, Even if nobody buys anything, you'll still probably have a pretty fun day. As I'm sort of wrapping up these tomatoes, I just wanted to touch on one last thing, sort of a callback to what I first talked about in this video, which is allowing yourself to make stuff that is quote unquote ugly. I know for myself, there is so much pressure, both real pressure, financial pressure, outside pressure, pressure from my followers and fans, but also imagined pressure that I create for myself. There's so much pressure to always create stuff that is sort of up to my own level, that is on par with the best stuff I've ever made, that is constantly impressing and pushing some sort of boundary and sending some sort of beautiful message. And that type of pressure is not sustainable. That's the type of stuff that leads to burnout and leads to, hiding your art and not wanting to share it with people. And as I was painting these tomatoes, I only took about half an hour to do these. And I was pretty happy with them at the beginning. And then I painted that stem in, and immediately I was like, oh, I hate this. I've done it and it's too late to go back, and it looks so bad. And for a second, it almost sort of made me quit. I was ready to just turn the camera off and be like, well, that was a failed painting. But instead I just kept going. I kept adding more layers. I kept refining things and changing up my colors. And I was still using my reference, but I was also just looking at what I had and sort of making adjustments from real life to the painting as it was happening. And in the end, I was really happy with how it turned out. And maybe it's not 100% true to life, but I wasn't really concerned with that to begin with. When I paint from a reference, it really is just a reference. I'm not trying to be a realism artist. I'm just trying to paint how I feel and what I like in that moment. And I think that's my last piece of advice for you. If you are trying to be a full-time artist, is sometimes stuff is not going to go the way you think it's going to go, whether it be, you start a painting and you mess something up, or you apply to a gallery and you don't get it, or whatever, any of the other hundreds of bad things that can happen to artists every day. But all you have to do is just keep going, keep painting, keep drawing, keep making things. Even if you throw away 100 of those things, if you get to keep one that looks how you want it to look, that's a win. So yeah, just keep making stuff, don't be afraid to put it out into the world, and don't be afraid to keep some of it for yourself, I guess, is the major overarching lesson. Thanks for being here to watch me paint these tomatoes. At this point, I'm just fiddling with highlights. You might have noticed the colors change really dramatically in this video a few times. It's just because I'm moving my light source. I have a big drawing light above my desk that is really helpful for me, but in the camera, it does give a little bit of a glare. So you don't really see the true colors as well as you might see them in real life. But at the end of the video, I kind of hold up the painting so that you get a better look at it. But yeah, I'll be back at some point with more videos of me making stuff and talking about whatever I feel like. Thank you for watching, and see you again soon. Enjoy the end of this. I should also mention that you can find me on Instagram at maddmoll, MADDMOLL. I also have a TikTok, but I really don't use it that much. I'm going to try to get back into it. There's just so many platforms now. I can't be bothered to use all of them. Also, apologies if you can hear some really loud cat meows in the background. My cat refuses to leave me alone, which is a really nice problem to have. So yeah, you just enjoy those. Yeah, see you next time.